If anyone here can translate this, Danilo Souza growled, raising a thick envelope above his head, I'll give them my entire salary. The room fell silent for a split second, just enough time for the arrogance in his voice to echo. Then the laughter exploded. Danilo, CEO of one of Brazil's largest import corporations, stood like a ringmaster in the middle of the company's lavish reception hall. Around him, department heads, interns, and assistants laughed, some nervously, others with exaggerated glee. To them, this was just another of Danilo's grand displays, his monthly ego show. What they didn't see was Renata Silva, dressed in a blue janitor's uniform, crouched by the restroom door, a few steps away. She'd been scrubbing the floor when Danilo's voice had pierced the air. Now she paused, still gripping the wet mop. She didn't laugh. She didn't even blink. She just listened quietly, like she had for 2 years. That morning, a courier had arrived with an urgent letter. It came directly from Hungary and was marked with several official seals and a bright, red stamp. Urgent, respond by 6 p.m. today. Danilo had opened it with disdain, expecting some irrelevant offer, or worse, another scam. But what he found made his eyebrows twitch. What the hell is this? He mumbled, tossing the paper onto his desk. Mariana, his sharp but discreet executive assistant, walked in. She leaned over the papers carefully. Sir, this is Hungarian, she said slowly. It looks official. There are legal symbols, signatures, and the valuation here is in euros. Danilo scoffed. Euros? Must be a scam. She frowned and pointed at the date. It says we must respond by 6 p.m. today. Then get someone to translate it. Pay whatever it takes. This can't be that hard. But it was. Mariana started making calls, one after the other. Every translation service either didn't have someone fluent in Hungarian or couldn't handle legal documents under such tight deadlines. It's too rare, one of them said. Especially for legal interpretation. Hungarian's no joke. By 2:45 p.m., Danilo was pacing his office, sweat forming beneath the collar of his tailored shirt. You mean to tell me that in a city of millions, not one damn person speaks Hungarian? He stormed out of his office, holding the papers high like a torch. I'll give 45,000 reais to whoever translates this garbage. He shouted from the top of the grand staircase that overlooked the open floor. Laughter rippled again. Roberto from sales yelled out, For that kind of money, I'll learn Hungarian in 30 minutes. That was when Renata moved. She stood up slowly, adjusted her rubber gloves, and walked into the middle of the reception hall. The tiled floor beneath her was still damp, but she walked over it as if it were dry marble. Every head turned. Someone snickered. Others whispered. What is she doing? She stopped a few feet from Danilo. Her voice was steady. Mr. Danilo, she said, I believe I can help with the translation. Danilo blinked at her like she'd just spoken in tongues. You? He said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. You speak Hungarian? Yes, sir, she replied calmly. I do. The laughter this time was louder than before. Mariana looked torn, her mouth opening and closing. Even she wasn't sure if this was real. Danilo, smirking, waved the papers in the air. All right, genius, he said mockingly. Show us what you've got. Renata took the documents gently, as if they were sacred. She scanned the pages quickly. The room fell into a strange silence. Her face didn't change at first, but then her eyes narrowed. She exhaled slowly. Something was shifting inside her, something she had buried deep for years. She cleared her throat. Tistel Danilo Souza, she began, her voice loud and fluent. The silence was instant, not even a breath. She continued, now in Portuguese. We are writing to inform you of the estate left by Joseph Souza. Danilo's jaw dropped. His laughter was gone. Wait, are you serious? Yes, sir. This is a legal notification. Your Uncle Joseph passed away in Budapest. You are named as the sole heir to an estate worth 15 million euros. But you must confirm receipt of this letter by 6 p.m. today." Danilo stumbled back. 15 million? His hand trembled as he snatched the papers from her, reading them again, now with wide, terrified eyes. "How do you know Hungarian?" he asked in a whisper. Renata took a breath. "I was a linguistics professor at the University of São Paulo for 15 years, she said. Specialized in Eastern European languages. Before that, I worked as a translator at the Hungarian consulate." The room was frozen. Mariana brought her hand to her mouth. Roberto stood dumbfounded. Amanda from finance dropped her spreadsheet. No one moved. It was as if Renata had transformed before their eyes from ghost to goddess. "But why are you working here?" Mariana finally asked, her voice shaking. Renata hesitated. "I exposed a fake diploma scheme at the university," she said. "They fired me, blacklisted me. My daughter was sick, my husband unemployed. I took the first job with a health plan." Danilo sat down, stunned. He had mocked her for years, ignored her, and now she was his only chance to claim a fortune he didn't even know existed. "Can you translate it all?" he asked. "Yes. I can also draft the legal response that needs to be sent before midnight. But I have conditions. I want a computer, internet access, silence, and full autonomy." Danilo nodded at Mariana, still speechless. "Take her to the meeting room. Give her everything she needs." Renata walked through the parted crowd like a queen entering her court. 10 minutes ago, she had been invisible. Now, she was the most important person in the building. In the quiet of the glass-walled meeting room, Renata worked like a storm, hidden beneath still waters. She didn't flinch. Her fingers moved quickly over the keyboard of the company laptop. Her eyes scanned legal codes, cross-referenced terms, and drafted a response that would not only hold up under scrutiny, but shine under it. At 4:15 p.m., she emerged with a carefully organized folder in her hands. She walked up to Danilo, who had been pacing back and forth outside, wiping sweat from his forehead with a silk handkerchief. Renata handed him the documents. Full translation, legal acceptance letter drafted, power of attorney included, instructions for international express mail attached. Danilo stared at the pages as if they were glowing. The letter was written flawlessly. At the bottom, Renata had added footnotes translating complex Hungarian legal terminology. The precision was shocking better than most law firms he had hired in the past. "You're? Incredible," Danilo muttered, finally lifting his eyes to meet hers. Renata didn't blink. "Mr. Danilo, you offered your salary for this task. 45,000 reais. I'm here to collect." Danilo, still breathless, nodded. "You'll get it, but I'd also like to make you an offer. Stay with the company officially as our translation consultant. I'll pay you 10,000 a month, full benefits." Renata paused. For a moment, Danilo feared she would walk away. "I'll think about it," she said calmly, "but thank you for the offer. Now go. You're running out of time." Danilo didn't argue. He rushed off to the courier service like a man possessed. Renata stayed behind, seated at a table she had never been invited to before. For the first time in 2 years, she wasn't holding a mop but a future. The next morning, Renata arrived before 7 a.m., just like always. But this time, she wasn't wearing her blue uniform. She wore a modest white blouse, dark slacks, and a quiet confidence. She sat in the reception area with her purse in her lap. Paula, the receptionist, blinked in surprise. "Good morning, Renata. You look different today." "Good morning, Paula. I'm waiting for Mr. Danilo. I'm here to discuss the offer he made yesterday." Paula smiled. "I'm happy for you. You deserve this." At exactly 8 o'clock, Danilo walked in, earlier than usual. His eyes immediately landed on Renata. He stopped for a breath. "Good morning, Renata. Have you made a decision?" "Yes, Mr. Danilo," she replied. "I accept the offer to work as a translation consultant, but I have a few conditions. Do you have time to hear them?" He nodded, curious. "Of course. I'd like to work part-time for the first 2 weeks," she said. "I want to train my replacement in cleaning. I won't leave the company in a difficult spot." Danilo blinked, then nodded. "That's very fair. I also want my salary deposited directly into the account of the clinic where my daughter is receiving treatment. I can't risk any delays." "Done," Danilo replied immediately. "And lastly," she added, "I want a signed contract, with all my responsibilities clearly outlined. I don't want anyone questioning my qualifications in the future." Danilo's face softened. "Absolutely. We'll write it today." They walked together to the executive floor. Mariana was already waiting, the day's agenda in her hands. "Renata," she said with a genuine smile, "welcome officially. It'll be a privilege working with you." "Thank you, Mariana. I'm looking forward to it." Before the day had even properly started, Mariana's phone rang. She picked up, listened briefly, then pressed the intercom. "Mr. Danilo, Dr. Kovacs is on the line from Hungary. He says it's urgent." Danilo picked up the phone and gestured for Renata to stay. The call started in English, but soon shifted into Hungarian. Danilo's face twisted in confusion. Renata took the receiver from him smoothly. After a few tense minutes, she hung up. "We have a problem," she said, turning to him. "New documents have arrived. The inheritance is being contested." Danilo nearly dropped the phone. "Contested?" "I thought it was settled." "Not completely. 2 cousins and a woman claiming to have been in a domestic partnership with your uncle have come forward. They're demanding a share." Danilo ran his hands through his hair. "What now? We have to go to Budapest. There's a hearing in 2 days. If you don't show up, the court might rule it as abandonment. You could lose everything." 2 days? He stammered. "I don't even have a passport." "We'll handle it. Mariana can help with the documentation. I'll handle the legal prep." He hesitated, then asked, "Would you come with me?" "Yes," she said without hesitation. "But I have one condition." Danilo narrowed his eyes. "What is it?" "I want 5% of whatever portion of the inheritance you manage to keep. It's the same any international attorney would charge." Danilo swallowed hard. 5% of 15 million euros. Nearly 1 million reais. But losing everything would cost far more. "Deal," he said. "You've earned every cent." Within hours, the team jumped into action. Mariana fast-tracked an emergency passport. Amanda booked flights and accommodations. Roberto managed legal authorizations. Renata made several discreet calls to Budapest, activating contacts she hadn't spoken to in years. By morning, they were boarding the flight to Hungary. On the plane, Danilo barely slept. He stared out the window, restless and anxious. Beside him, Renata calmly read through Hungarian legal codes on her tablet, underlining key sections and rehearsing potential responses. "Were you always this prepared?" Danilo asked quietly. "Yes," she said, still reading. "But no one ever looked me in the eyes long enough to notice." They landed in Budapest under a gray autumn sky. A light drizzle coated the city's rooftops as their car sped through wide boulevards lined with chestnut trees and iron balconies. Waiting for them at the airport was Andres Kovacs, a seasoned attorney and an old colleague of Renata's. His face lit up when he saw her. "Renata," he greeted warmly. "I never thought I'd see you in this part of the world again." "It seems fate had other plans," she replied with a soft smile. During the drive to the hotel, Andres filled them in. "The other claimants are aggressive," he said. "They have powerful attorneys and are arguing based on verbal promises emotional relationships, and vague family ties. Danilo's jaw tightened. But we have the official documents. Isn't that enough? Not always, Andres said. Without witnesses or further proof, they'll try to argue that Joseph was coerced, senile, or pressured. Renata nodded. Then we'll need more than the will. We'll need to prove Joseph's full mental capacity and his clear intention. The next day, they went to the central registry. The building smelled of old paper and polish. Marble floors echoed beneath their footsteps as they were led to the archives. Renata requested the full documentation related to Joseph Souza. What they found was gold. 3 wills, each written over the span of a decade. The most recent one dated just 3 months before Joseph's death, clearly named Danilo as sole heir. It was signed, stamped, and witnessed. Even more valuable was a half-finished letter. Joseph had begun to write to Danilo. The handwriting was unmistakably his. The words were simple but deeply moving. Dear nephew Danilo, you don't even know I exist, but I've always thought of you. I want to leave you what I've built, because you are my blood. Danilo stared at the letter, his throat dry. He knew about me, he whispered. Yes, Renata said gently. And he chose you. That afternoon, they brought everything to the legal office handling the estate division. Dr. Peter Chabot, the firm's senior partner, received them personally. We have a difficult case, he said, but not impossible. The claimants are trying to prove your uncle changed his mind, or that he was manipulated in his final months. Renata stepped forward. We will prove otherwise. We'll show that he acted with full awareness, that this was his final and conscious decision. Do you have witnesses? He asked. Renata nodded. I've already contacted them. Joseph's physician, his housekeeper, and 2 longtime neighbors. All of them heard him talk about Danilo. They know about the letter. Peter smiled. Then we have a fighting chance. On the day of the hearing, the courtroom was packed. 3 judges sat at the front, stone-faced and unreadable. Across the aisle sat the other claimants. Esther, a woman in her mid-60s with an elegant black dress and somber expression, claimed to have lived with Joseph in his final months. Beside her sat 2 men Bela and Merali Joseph's distant cousins, both in suits far too expensive for their modest backgrounds. Renata sat beside Danilo at the long table. She whispered translations in his ear as the proceedings began. The other attorneys moved aggressively. They painted Danilo as a stranger and opportunist who had never met his uncle and had no emotional ties. They claimed Joseph had been in a loving relationship with Esther, that he had verbally promised her a life together and the estate. They presented photos, casual, blurry images of Esther and Joseph in the same garden. But there was no documentation, no cohabitation record, no marriage, no financial linkage. Then came Renata's witnesses. First, the housekeeper. Esther? She said, puzzled. She only showed up after Joseph fell ill. Before that, we never saw her. Next, the physician. Joseph was fully lucid in his final months. He told me more than once that his only wish was to leave everything to his nephew. He was proud of him, though they'd never met. Then the elderly neighbor. He used to sit outside and talk about Brazil, she said. Said he had a nephew there, one he wanted to find before it was too late. Finally, Renata brought out the handwritten letter. She placed it gently in front of the judges. This was written by Joseph Souza, she said. It matches his other writings. The content affirms his intention, even if unfinished. The courtroom was silent. Danilo looked at the 3 judges, unsure if their faces gave anything away. The chief judge looked over his glasses. We will take 1 hour to deliberate. Danilo turned to Renata as they stepped outside the courtroom. His hands were shaking. Do you think we'll win? She looked at him, calm and steady. Yes, trust the evidence, and trust me. He nodded, but his stomach was in knots. Exactly 1 hour later, the courtroom doors opened. Everyone filed back in. The judges returned to their seats. The chief judge cleared his throat. This court recognizes the legitimacy of the most recent will written by Joseph Souza. We hereby declare Danilo Souza as the sole legal heir to the estate, as per the testamentary documentation. Danilo exhaled so forcefully, it was almost a sob. He collapsed into the chair behind him. Renata gently squeezed his hand. "Congratulations," she whispered. "No," he replied. "Thank you. Without you, I would have lost everything." The flight back to Brazil felt completely different from the one before. Danilo was no longer sweating through his designer shirt, no longer pacing in fear of losing everything. He leaned back in his seat, looking through the plane window, watching clouds roll by at 30,000 feet. For once, he felt something unusual humility. Beside him, Renata reviewed documents on her tablet. Not because she had to, but because that's what she did. She was thorough, sharp, and always 3 steps ahead. "You're quiet," Danilo said softly. She looked up. "Just making sure everything is in order for the transfer of assets." He hesitated, then added, "I was serious about what I said. Without you, I would have lost everything." Renata gave him a small nod. "I know. Back in São Paulo, things moved fast." Danilo officially received the inheritance, an estate worth over 15 million euros. But more than that, something began to change in the way he viewed the people around him. Renata was promoted again, this time to Director of International Relations, with a newly formed division focused on inheritance and cross-border legal affairs, an initiative inspired directly by what had just occurred. No one questioned her now. She had a proper office with glass walls, a full team, and a title that matched her mind. But even with her new role, Renata never lost her sense of grounding. She still arrived early. She still greeted the cleaning crew by name. She even made sure her former position was filled by someone she trained personally. 2 months later, the company gathered for a celebration in the main hall. Balloons, banners, and the hum of chatter filled the air. Sofia, Renata's daughter, had just been accepted to the University of São Paulo first place in the medical school entrance exam. The news spread like wildfire across departments. Everyone congratulated Renata. Even those who had once laughed behind her back now stood in awe of what she had built and what she had overcome. Danilo took the stage that day to give a speech. His voice was steady, his demeanor different, less arrogant, more reflective. "For 2 years," he began, "I ignored one of the most brilliant people I've ever met. I treated her like she didn't exist. I judged her by a uniform. I made assumptions that almost cost me everything." There was silence in the room. "She not only saved my fortune, she opened my eyes." He looked toward Renata, who stood quietly at the side, her daughter by her side. "From today forward," Danilo continued, 15% of the company's annual profits will be distributed among all employees. And we are creating a scholarship fund for the children of our workers, so that every dream, no matter where it comes from, can have a chance. The room erupted into applause. Some people cried. Mariana hugged Renata tightly. "You've changed everything here," she whispered. Danilo stepped down and walked to Sofia. "Congratulations, doctor," he said. Sofia smiled. "Thank you, Mr. Danilo. My mother always said you changed our lives." Danilo looked at Renata. "She changed mine." A month later, an unexpected letter arrived from the Hungarian government. Danilo and Renata were invited to Budapest once again, this time not for a hearing, but for an honor. They had been selected to receive honorary citizenship in recognition of the way they handled the estate case professionally, ethically, and with grace. Renata sat in her office when she opened the envelope. Her hands trembled. She wiped away a tear, speechless. Danilo entered a few moments later. "What is it?" he asked. She handed him the letter. He read it silently and looked up. You're being recognized. You deserve this. Renata smiled through misty eyes. I never imagined that dignity could be seen like this. Danilo nodded. It's your dignity that taught mine how to exist. Later that week, they flew to Budapest together. This time, not as strangers or co-workers, but as equals. They stood side by side during the ceremony, receiving medals and certificates from the mayor, surrounded by cameras and applause. And in the crowd, a quiet sense of justice settled like snow-soft but irreversible. The arrogant statement that had once echoed through an office lobby, if someone here can translate this, I'll give them my salary, was now part of company lore. But it wasn't just about the salary. It was about what happens when we finally see the people we spend every day walking past. Renata, once invisible, had become the soul of a revolution, a silent, unstoppable revolution, where respect triumphed over hierarchy, where justice whispered louder than arrogance, and where one forgotten letter in a foreign tongue became the spark that changed everything. The sun filtered through the blinds of Renata's office as she sat reviewing contracts with a cup of tea beside her. The company had changed drastically in the last few months, and so had she. Her schedule was full meetings with embassies, translating legal documents from multiple languages, preparing teams for international ventures. But her mind often wandered to quieter things. Her daughter's first semester in medical school, the quiet dignity of her former colleagues in the cleaning crew, and the long years where her voice had been silenced. One morning, Mariana walked in with a folder in her hand. We've just received another request, this time from the Belgian government, she said. A cross-border succession case. They're asking for your oversight. Renata nodded, flipping through the documents. Let's schedule a call for tomorrow morning. I'll need the original copies and a translator from Flemish just to cross-check terms. Mariana hesitated. You speak Flemish too, don't you? Renata looked up and smiled. I do. But it's always good to double-check. Precision matters. Mariana sat across from her, lowering her voice. Do you ever miss the university? The classroom? Renata leaned back in her chair, eyes distant. I miss the students, the curiosity, the sense of purpose, but not the politics, not the fear, not the silence they demanded after I spoke the truth. They made a mistake letting you go, Mariana said. Renata's expression remained calm. It led me here. Sometimes falling is part of rising. At that moment, Danilo walked in, holding a small envelope. His presence, once imposing, now carried a quiet respect. I have something for you, he said, handing her the envelope. It arrived this morning. Renata opened it slowly. Inside was a letter from the Hungarian university, where she had once been invited to lecture before her life fell apart. The dean, having heard of her recent recognition, invited her to return as a guest speaker for a lecture on ethical succession law and international justice. Renata placed the letter down, emotion fluttering behind her composed face. It's full circle, Danilo said. She looked at him. Sometimes dignity takes the long road. Danilo smiled. Do you still want the 5% from the inheritance? Renata nodded without hesitation. Absolutely. That agreement was part of the process. He laughed. Good, because we've just transferred your portion, nearly 4 million reais. She blinked once, calmly. Thank you. Danilo became serious again. But I want to offer you something else. I'm listening. A seat on the company board. You've earned more than a title. You've changed this place. Permanently. Renata studied his face. I'll think about it. But if I accept, I want to guarantee real investment in education for the children of all employees. Not just symbolic. I want results. Deal, he said immediately. You've made that the soul of this company. Over the next few weeks, change became tangible. The scholarship fund launched. Applications poured in. Sophia began mentoring 2 students from the janitorial staff. Renata built a language and ethics program open to all employees. Workers who had once been laughed at now attended night classes in the conference room. Even the cleaning uniforms were redesigned practical, dignified, and made to withstand the kinds of work that once defined her days. One afternoon, Renata stood quietly near the reception area, watching as the company buzzed with life. It was the same building, but everything felt new. Paula, the receptionist, called out to her, "Renata, there's someone asking for you." A young woman in torn jeans and nervous eyes stood just outside the glass door, holding a folder. She looked out of place, uncertain. Renata walked to her. "Can I help you?" I heard you sometimes help people like me," the girl said, barely lifting her eyes. "I was expelled from university after I reported something bad. They said I was lying. But I wasn't." Renata didn't flinch. "Come in," she said. "We'll talk." They sat in the very room where Danilo had once tossed his arrogance like confetti. But now it was quiet, focused, human. Renata listened as the girl told her story. Not because it was new, but because it was familiar. When the young woman finished, Renata closed the folder gently. "I believe you. We'll start by protecting your story. Then we'll build your future." The girl's eyes welled up. "Why are you helping me?" Renata smiled softly. "Because once someone looked at me and only saw a uniform. I know how much that hurts." That evening, as she walked through the quiet office halls, she paused near the framed certificate on the wall, the honorary Hungarian citizenship. It hung beside the company's new ethics charter, something she had written by hand. Danilo joined her, coffee in hand. "You never told me what made you learn Hungarian in the first place," he said. Renata chuckled. "I fell in love with its complexity. It's one of the hardest languages in the world. It forces you to listen deeply, or you'll miss everything." Danilo took a sip. "That sounds like life," she nodded. "Exactly." They stood there for a moment, not saying much. There was no need, because everything had already been said, in silence, in action, in courage. And from that day forward, whenever someone in the company heard the phrase, "If someone here can translate this," it didn't mean mockery. It meant that someone, somewhere, might just be the key to a revolution, even if they wore rubber gloves and a blue uniform. Especially if they did.